Did you hear what Paul George said on his podcast? If you don't know, Paul George has his own podcast. And the clip that is going viral now is him talking about the negotiations with the Clippers. So basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, so if I get any, amount of money or, part wrong, I apologize. But basically what he said is, I think this was before Kawhi had gotten his 3-year 150 or whatever Kawhi got. They offered Paul George, he said, 2 years 60, and he's like, I'm not accepting that. So this is like 2 years ago again. I believe he was saying that this was before the Kawhi deal was done. So again, the timeline may be a little bit off, but basically he said they offered him 2 years 60. He's like, not gonna happen, basically. And then Kawhi got his money, I guess. And then he was like, well, just give me what Kawhi got, because he said in the clip, I'm not gonna take more than Kawhi. So give me the 3 years 150 or whatever it was. And then Paul George basically said in the clip as well, he was like, if I'm taking a little bit less though, I want a no trade clause because I want to make sure that I'm here to the end, and that obviously, why players want a no trade clause. They don't want to be traded without their consent. And so he said the Clippers said, no, we're not going to do that. And then Paul George said, well, in that case, I want the 4-year 212 because if there's a chance you're going to trade me, at least let me get my money. So again, I may have missed a part or two in there, but that's basically what Paul George said. That's like a summary of what he said. So the reason I wanted to talk about this is because we were talking about Paul George a few weeks ago and how he wanted the 4-year max. And why it's so interesting is because all we heard, or all I heard, and I'm sure a lot of you heard, was that Paul George wanted the 4-year max. We didn't hear anything about they offered him 2 years 60, or that he was willing to take the 3-year 150 like Kawhi, no trade clause. Maybe it was out there somewhere if I, dug deep or something. But I didn't hear it. I didn't see it. Especially not the 2-year 160. 2 year 60 rather. Again, maybe if you dig on the internet, maybe there's some article somewhere talking about, Paul George being offered or trying to get 3 years 150 no trade clause. I'm not saying it's not anywhere potentially. But the one that we saw everywhere was Paul George wants a 4-year max, and the Clippers are not on board with that. And Paul George said, he still likes, the guys in the front office, and he still loves Steve Ballmer and stuff like that. So I'm not blaming the Clippers or anything like that, because, they do what they think is best for their organization. Paul George does what, he thinks is best for him. But what's interesting is, like I said, we didn't hear any of those prior negotiations. So with this new podcast era of players, are we going to start to hear inside information like this all the time? Because again, think about it. Offering Paul George 2 years 60, which he was like, no way. Does that necessarily make them look bad? That's, up to your judgment. If you think it makes them look bad for only offering him that, and then some other people will say it's a fair deal. Whatever you think is your opinion. But you can't even form an opinion if that information is not out there, right? So now with the players having these platforms and podcasts and spaces to share these kind of things, are we going to start seeing not only more information being shared, like I just said, but kind of maybe some new rules put into place, like privacy rules? I don't know if that's actually possible. Not a lawyer. I don't know what the legal matter could be and what the limits are and what are not. But maybe they start putting into place privacy things if people start doing more of this. And again, I'm not saying Paul George was wrong for doing this. He didn't do anything wrong. He's just explaining the situation and giving everybody a full point of view. So I'm not mad at Paul George. I'm not blaming him, nothing. What I'm saying is teams I don't think they're going to be thrilled with this if stuff like this happens consistently long term. And whether that's fair or right, that's not for me to say. But again, and I'm not saying the players are doing anything wrong, but you have to imagine as a team, they can't be thrilled that 2 years 60 was put out there. Because again, there is a good chance that a lot of people would find that as a bad offer for Paul George. And although the players obviously talk amongst themselves, and I don't know, but I would assume that Paul George probably told, somebody else in the NBA, at least one other person, about the 2 years, $60 million. So I'm not saying it was a secret within the players, but Paul George, I would assume, does not talk to everybody in the NBA because that'd be kind of hard to do. So what I'm saying is, now this information is global, worldwide, or nationwide, whatever. And so now those players on, he's on the Clippers, let's just go to the Charlotte Hornets on the other side of the country. And the 15th man on the roster never talked to Paul George. And now he's hearing that the Clippers offered him, Paul George, someone who's playing at an all-star caliber level, all that kind of stuff, 2 years, 60. And let's just say this player has a come up, and now instead of being the 15th man on the bench, he becomes a starter. We're just making up a scenario here. And now he's a free agent. And the Clippers are like, we want you. But he sees what kind of offer they gave to Paul George. He's like, no, I don't think I'm going to go here because I see how you do negotiations. And again, I'm not saying the Clippers did anything wrong. They are entitled to offer what they feel is best for them. And it was still $30 million per year. Like, let's not act like they offered Paul George $5 million per year. Okay, so let's just make that clear. Do we think that it was what Paul George should have been offered? Maybe not. But again, it wasn't $5 million per year, so we'll just make that clear. However, now everybody can see players, like I said, could start making decisions based on this information they hear about how teams are negotiating. And then fans who, let's put it into a fan perspective for a second. Let's say you're a Clippers fan and all you heard was Paul George wants the 4-year max, whatever it was. And as a Clippers fan, Kawhi took 3 years, 150 or whatever it was. So maybe as a Clippers fan, you might be like, why does Paul George think he deserved more than Kawhi? I'm not saying that's my opinion, but I'm saying that's how some people think. And so all they heard was that, and now they hear that he actually was willing to take what Kawhi got, although it did include a no trade clause, so that is a big stipulation. But the point is, he was willing to take less. So now the fans' opinion is a little bit different because they're like, oh, Paul George wasn't trying to get more than Kawhi or trying to just take all the money he could or whatever. So I just think that Paul George's clip may have big ramifications in good and bad ways for players and owners and teams and fans that may not seem big at the moment. It may just seem like, a little small clip. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it turns into nothing. Maybe this doesn't start a snowball effect. But it could be a snowball effect and turn into something like I just said, where there's a lot of Band-Aid stuff going on.